It's a funny question. The "and" in the question makes it challenging. I'm wholly comfortable with my identity. I don't think I can say that, and I wear two hats, right? I'm a parent and I'm a staff. I can't wear my full parent hat or full Jabali hat as a staff person. And I definitely can't wear my full parent hat in the parent circle because I'm a staff person. So I don't think I can ever really show up fully realize as who I am. I think it would scare people, actually. So I play neutral.
By neutral, do you think there's some kind of like sides between parents and staffers? I really don't know.
Yes. But I also think there's pressures and stressors. As a parent, I have wants of this institution. As a staff member, I am expected to provide for those wants. If I'm as a parent, among other parents, they know I'm a staff person, they can politic me in order to try to figure out the what's the what and the real dirt and all that kind of stuff, and it's exhausting. And it's I can't get out of the role of being a staff person in a parent population. It just doesn't happen. If I left my job, I would be way more free to be who I am as a parent here.
There are different schools like us that have affinity groups for faculty and staff parents because it is this really unique identity that you have to wear, and it affects your job and it affects your parent, like how you show up as a parent. And in some ways you're like distance, you feel like your true self is sort of distanced from both because you have to be both in both spaces. So you have to be careful about how you advocate for your kid because you can't be doing it all the time because you know what I mean? You have to or how you would do that if you weren't staff versus, and then, yeah, just building on what you're saying. So it's definitely, and I try to think of other organizations where that might happen, just where people are wearing but I think working in schools is definitely a specific, and that's just what I've worked in, so it's what I've known, but it's a specific, so just the way we have affinity groups for different, different groups. We don't have it here, but we've talked about it over the years, I know, and other schools I've worked at have too, so.
I don't feel very included in the school community. And I mean, that has a lot to do with me and my own personal experiences and the way that I've been living my life in the last 4 years. And a lot of that is it's this weird thing where that's both very separate from my sense of belonging at Bush, but also very heavily intertwined with it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to say that I strongly disagree with that statement. Yeah, it's hard to say I strongly disagree with that because there are little pockets of people and places at this school where I do feel, I mean, there's probably 2 people at this school that I feel like I can be my whole self with. But I think everywhere else at school, I kind of stick to 1 or 2 aspects of my identity rather than my entire being.
There is an adult or colleague here at Bush that I feel comfortable talking to about non-class related topics. 3, 2, 1.
I've sort of been living my school life with the assumption that I should sort of separate that from the rest of my life. So it's mainly I go to school, I get my work done, and then I come home and cry. Not that often. So I think it's a little bit by choice and a little bit just me.
Yeah, I agree with Healey. I have never really felt the need to talk to an adult here about something that doesn't relate to school. So I just haven't really bothered to forge those connections, I guess, with the adults here, but that's fine with me, I guess.
I actually feel like I have like a fair amount of like adults, faculty members at Bush that I feel like I can talk to about most things in my life, regardless of whether that relates to school or not. I mean, Maria's an obvious one because, that's literally her job. But, Emily is like 100% that person for me. I don't know. I feel like she's been a really good resource for me when kind of anything was going on in my life, regardless of whether that was at Bush or not. She knows most of what happens in my life. Yeah, so, and I have other faculty members, I feel like, as well, that I do talk to about other things than just like class and Bush. Like Jeremy is a big one. Just having spent pretty much my entire 4 years in the theater. Yeah.
I would second the call towards Emily. She's a wonderful person, and because of the work that we do, we have to be that way. As a circle keeper, being really in touch with self is vital, and she gets it. It's been a wonderful journey in that way. And then I've been lucky enough, because of the work in the middle school, the circle work in the middle school, I've got a group of people who are stepping into the keeping role and learning more about it. And so we actually meet weekly in a very deep way, because that's what we have to cultivate in order for us to sit in circle with students. If we didn't do that, none of this would work. So of that, I'm very grateful. Yeah, it is.
I feel like I can make a difference at Bush. 3, 2, 1.
I would like to start. We spent, you correct me on this, we spent 3 months trying to move a box of condoms 5 feet and didn't in Senate. I think, for me personally, I feel like I can't really structurally or like change things in a very major way, because I'm mainly speaking as a senator's perspective, we're sort of a way to listen, and we're giving very limited things we can do, and we're also, I don't want to say we're given the blame for a lot of things, but I think we're expected to do more than we actually can. Often the criticisms of Senate are valid, and often they are students who have very legitimate feelings going after a target that I'm not sure is worth it. And then as an individual, I don't really feel like a cog in the machine, but I definitely feel like an ant. And I'm not sure what I could do to change the school in a super meaningful way. It's very possible that that is just me being me. I quite enjoy being an ant, but it's also possible that it's more of a larger issue.
I think that's so cool. I had no idea that was happening. I don't know how I slept on that, but I think that's really cool, and I think that will give students way more of a chance to feel like they actually have like an impact on this school. This is another shout out to Emily. Last year I read a book with her called Emergent Strategy that was about like making social change. And it used a lot of like nature metaphors for like how to make that change. And so I think it's like taken me a while to kind of figure all of this out and like really figure out like what my impact on this community is, and how I can impact this community. But a lot of what that book was about was how like change can't start from like one large group. Like change starts with an individual. And like two of the metaphors that really stuck with me, the first one was essentially how like trees can survive like really harsh weather and storms, and that's because like above ground they're all like separate and away from each other, but underneath the ground they've got like this huge expanse of just like roots, like rooted together. And basically that the only way that they can survive like storms and really harsh conditions is the fact that they're all intertwined underneath, which I think says a lot about Bush and how not only how we can make change here in our relationship with one another within this community, but I think also it kind of highlights, I think, maybe how we've been lacking in that. And I think it kind of speaks to some of why we've been having these really like painful events, occurrences happening, especially around race, is because we aren't all like rooted within each other, and we don't have that like knit bond together. And the other one was about birds and how, you know, the birds that like fly in like the really huge packs, but basically how there's no like signal about like which way the birds are gonna move next, and like when they're gonna turn, when they're gonna go up, when they're gonna go down, stuff like that. But essentially like one bird does it and then all the other birds kind of follow. And I really liked that because it really made me think about my impact as an individual and how like regardless of whether I can see everyone behind me who follows me when I turn, I think there is that effect, and it kind of made me more comfortable with the fact that I don't always see like maybe big systemic changes because of me and the things that I do, but there are changes and those like ripple effects.
I've also had experiences where I was sort of able to make a difference, which is I was actually able to get the tennis team to have uniforms. What? I mean, they're there. It doesn't matter how good they are. We actually have uniforms. And second is when Sage Dining came around, I had a lot of complaints about the way that they did stuff. And I sent in a complaint, and then they sorta kinda fixed it. So I am not totally resentful about my impact at Bush, but I feel like there can be a lot of change as to how things are done right now.
think it's sort of natural for like a senior like me to be really depressed about a lot of these questions, mainly because we're about to leave right as it seems like things are being done and right as we sort of discovered ourselves. So I have been sort of like here and then there. That is as much a result of me as it is a reflection on Bush. But it's still a reflection on Bush.
I think this has been more of a valuable experience for me as an individual than I went into it thinking it would be. It's like forced me to really, like literally this activity, has forced me to really reflect on a lot of the things that I've spent my time doing at Bush, and like these statements and questions that I actually think about a lot and are really important to me. So I think it'd actually be really interesting to have like other students do this more often, because I do think it really forces you to not only evaluate like Bush as a whole and its structure and everything, but I think it also forces you to evaluate like your part in that and kind of how you fit in, and not only how you're fitting in right now, but how you want to be fitting in. So I do think it would be really interesting to do something like this with like larger groups of students and make it more accessible to other students.
I do the surveys on behalf of the school, so I help it. I'm like the staff member that helps administer the surveys for the board, and I feel like it's like straight data, and this is just like this other type of learning where it voices in a different way, and I actually do think it would be interesting to do it around some of the things that we're interested in learning about the organization and the culture, and like Percy tries to talk to every senior, right? And he like pulls information from that, or like all the ways that we've traditionally tried to understand the culture of the school. I think this is another like interesting avenue into it that feels somewhat connected to Circle, but different. But there's like a lot of active listening, and like I feel like people showed up, and like feel like the group was small enough, and like that people are also comfortable sharing what their truth was. They didn't need to adjust, right? So, and that I appreciate too. And not just because I'm because you guys are so good, I'm your sponsor, but because it's like, I just think it's such a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Flora. I think this was a valuable experience, and I guess some of these questions are things that I haven't really thought about all that much during my time here, so I guess it's interesting to hear or like get a perspective from other people who have thought a lot more about them than I have during this time.